The title of the book was Housing Conditions in St. Louis, report of the Housing Committee of the Civic League of St. Louis. It's less than 100 pages long. The author, St. Louis's Charlotte Rumbold, the city's superintendent of playgrounds and recreation. The study was a deep dive into the conditions that people were living in the Carr Square neighborhood, at the time one of the city's poorest and most crowded neighborhoods. The report covers a lot of ground with text, tables, and charts, and photographs showing dirty, dangerous, and unhealthy housing conditions.
I thought the report was so fascinating. So the report was sort of the gateway for me to get to know more about her as a person and her work in St. Louis, as well as how influential the report itself ended up being.
Dr. Elizabeth Eichmann's PhD dissertation was on women photographers in St. Louis, and she saw something in this housing report that others might have missed.
And it wasn't until I started reading more about photography and social scientists' work at this time that I began to realize that the work that she actually does with those photographs was really sort of ahead of the curve.
Charlotte Rumbold was not a muckraking journalist or a rabble-rouser, but she was a force to be reckoned with, and she got things done. She'd worked to build playgrounds in crowded neighborhoods and bathhouses where so many people didn't have bathtubs, let alone indoor toilets. She was a believer that better conditions would make for better citizens and a better city. The 1908 report describes the overcrowding, the unsafe buildings, trash, unsanitary privies. Yes, there were 2 and even 3-story outhouses here. Rumbold and the Civic League researchers were not the first to take on such issues, not the first to use photographs. In 1890, Jacob Riis published How the Other Half Lives, a photographic expose of New York City tenements. At the same time the Civic League was working on its report, Louis Hine was documenting child labor in the U.S. In St. Louis, he took photos of newsboys and factory girls. His captions here pointed out that these boys were all smoking, these shooting craps in the alley.
And so he used these captions to sort of criticize what he was picturing and get the viewer to really think critically about what they were seeing.
Charlotte Rumbold did not take the housing report photos herself, but Eichmann says her contribution was in how she used them. Many do simply document the conditions, but some include people, most often children, and the captions don't describe them or their behavior, but instead describe the environment around them.
So like this particular image, if you were to just look at it quickly, you might miss this group of 5 children. They're like sort of swallowed up by the huge and dark buildings that surround them and kind of close them in. And the caption says, "Side passageway on North 10th Street, adjoining yard above drains into the passageway," leaving us as the viewer to sort of infer that and think about, why are the children in this side passageway on North 10th Street? Is this how we want the future of St. Louis to begin, to grow up?
The housing study lists the ethnic breakdown of the neighborhood: Jews, Italians, Negroes, Poles, various other nationalities. And a lot of people would have thought they were the problem. Rumbold wrote that it would be a mistake to minimize personal responsibility. But she said, it seems unlikely that from the ends of the earth, 13,000 people of all sorts of heredity and racial and national traditions should gather together in one little section of this city and deliberately choose to be dirty and diseased and lazy and criminal and poor.
She viewed the sort of failings of the neighborhood as the neighborhood being failed by city government, and took great pains in her report through both the prose and the photography to avoid placing blame on the individuals.
And to drive that point home, she included this photo, which the caption says is a commendable effort to make a home attractive. In another part of the report, she says buildings that were unfit for habitation were often on the inside what she called pathetically clean. Rumbold was a suffragist, a feminist, a social reformer, a modern woman of the 20th century. In the field of photography, the use of photography, she probably did not think of herself as an innovator.
course, she had full power over what went into that final report, right? She was the curator, author. So she decided what photos were going in, how the captions were going to be used to describe those images.
But she's not the photographer.
She's not, which is why I think maybe her story has gotten lost.
Or maybe it's because Charlotte Rumbold did so many other things. After the housing report came out and got attention, she continued to work for the city, following the philosophy that if we play together, we will work together. She was the driving force behind the 1914 pageant and masque in Forest Park, an all-day extravaganza. Think of it as a citywide team-building activity. But shortly thereafter, she left St. Louis. She wanted a raise, but opponents at City Hall said women were supposed to work cheaper, and they didn't vote.
To which, of course, she says, yes, I'm a woman. I'm proud to be a woman. It's a great time to be a woman. St. Louis, you've taught me a lot, right? Maybe some hard lessons, some lessons that she didn't really want to learn. You taught me a lot, and I'm grateful for it, but equal pay for equal work, I'm out of here.
She did get a pay increase from the city of Cleveland and left St. Louis, but she left it a better place, in part, for making it clear that this was a city far from picture perfect. For Living St. Louis, I'm Jim Kircher.